The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a monument to cooperation and peace. Thousands of delegates from 12 elder species filled its curved seats, their bodies ranging from insect-like to reptilian to forms that had no comparison on any single world. They had gathered here for 3,000 years to discuss trade, resolve disputes, and maintain order across 10,000 inhabited planets. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the central platform. A small human woman surrounded by beings that towered over her. She wore simple gray clothes with no weapons, no armor, and no guards. Her voice was calm and measured, as she spoke into the translation device that carried her words to every delegate in their own language. Border dispute between the Valari Collective and the Mundax. Federation has lasted for 60 years, she said. Both sides have valid claims. Both sides have suffered losses. But continued conflict will only bring more pain to both peoples. Gestured to a holographic display showing two star systems, connected by a thin line of contested space. Humanity proposes the following solution. The Valari will retain control of the three outer planets. The Mundax will receive the inner two planets and the asteroid mining rights. The central transit corridor will become a shared zone, administered jointly by both parties with Concord oversight. The Valari delegate, a tall being covered in iridescent scales, rose from his seat. This is acceptable to the collective. Ambassador Vasquez has shown wisdom in her proposal. The Mundax representative, a creature that resembled a giant mantis with 4 arms, clicked her mandibles in agreement. The Federation also accepts. We thank the humans for their patient mediation. Elena bowed slightly. Humanity is honored to serve the cause of peace. In the upper gallery, far from the main floor, a group of warriors watched the proceedings with cold eyes. They were Kaizeth, members of the most feared military empire in the known galaxy. Their bodies were massive, standing nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick gray hide that could stop most projectile weapons. Their faces held for eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and their mouths were filled with teeth designed for tearing flesh. Hi, Warlord. Dexel sat at the center of the Kaiseth delegation. He had conquered 11 worlds personally and commanded a fleet of 2,000 warships. His body bore the scars of 100 battles, each one a mark of pride. He watched the small human woman below with an expression that mixed amusement with contempt. Another treaty, he growled to his second-in-command. Another victory for the soft ones. Commander Crixfell nodded, his 4 eyes narrowing. They have brokered 11 major peace agreements in 50 years, my lord. The other species praise them constantly, because the other species are fools, Thexal replied. They see humans as wise peacemakers. I see them for what they truly are, weak, pathetic, prey animals playing at politics. He leaned forward, studying Elena Vasquez as she accepted thanks from the assembled delegates. Look at them, Crixfell. No natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no venom, no armor. Their bodies are soft and fragile. A Kaizeth child could kill a human adult with 1 blow. Their military forces are laughable. A few patrol ships, some ground defense units, nothing more. They have spread across 200 colony worlds with almost no protection. Crixville considered this, yet they seem to have influence far beyond their power, my lord. The elder species listened to them. Respect them, even. Exal made a sound of disgust. The elder species have grown soft in their old age. They have forgotten what strength means. They see humanity's weakness and call it virtue. They see their cowardice and call it wisdom. He stood, his massive frame casting a shadow over the seats around him. The Dominion has not forgotten. We remember that the galaxy belongs to the strong. And one day, we will remind these humans of their place in the natural order. Far below, Elena Vasquez concluded the treaty signing ceremony. She smiled warmly at the delegates who thanked her, shook appendages and tendrils with grace, and spoke kind words to everyone who approached. She was good at this. Humanity had become very good at this. But as she left the Great Hall and walked through the quiet corridors toward the human diplomatic quarters, her smile faded. Her assistant, a young man named David Chen, fell into step beside her. "Another success, Ambassador," he said. "That makes 12 major treaties this decade." Alina nodded, but her expression was troubled. "Did you see the Kaizith delegation?" David's face darkened. "I saw them. High Warlord Dexel himself. He watched the entire proceeding like a predator watching prey. He's been doing that more often lately. Attending sessions he has no stake in. Watching. Calculating." Alina stopped walking and turned to face her assistant. "The Dominion is planning something, David. I can feel it. Should we increase security around our colonies?" Alina was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "What do you know about the vaults, David?" The young man blinked in confusion. "The vaults? I don't understand." "What vaults?" Alina studied his face carefully, then shook her head. "Nothing. Forget I mentioned it. Just the paranoid thoughts of an old diplomat." She continued walking, leaving David to wonder what she had meant. 300 years ago, humanity had reached the stars and discovered they were not alone. The galaxy was old and full of ancient civilizations that had been traveling between worlds for millennia. These elder species looked upon the young humans with curiosity and eventually fondness. Humanity had arrived at a crucial moment in their development. They had just ended a period of terrible war among themselves. The scars of global conflict, nuclear threats, and endless violence had taught them a painful lesson. When they finally united as a species and built their first starships, they made a collective decision that would shape their future among the stars. Never again. They would not bring their wars to the cosmos. They would not spread their violence to other worlds. They would bury the weapons, close the military academies, and transform themselves into something new. Humanity would become healers instead of warriors, diplomats instead of soldiers, builders instead of destroyers. The elder species welcomed this peaceful young race with open arms. Humans were charming, adaptable, and eager to help. They learned the languages and customs of a dozen civilizations. They studied alien art, music, and philosophy. They became translators, mediators, and friends to all. And if some humans remembered the old ways, if some families kept certain knowledge alive in secret, if certain facilities were built in places no one would think to look, well, that was not something the galaxy needed to know. The mask was carefully crafted. Every smile, every peaceful gesture, every treaty signed, and every war prevented. It was all part of a performance 3 centuries in the making. Humanity showed the galaxy exactly what it wanted to see. Gentle creatures. Harmless friends. Soft and weak and utterly intriguing. In the hidden places, the wolves waited. They maintained the old ships, updated the old weapons, trained in the old ways. Generation after generation, they kept the knowledge alive and prayed it would never be needed. They watched their fellow humans become beloved across the galaxy and hoped that love would be enough to keep them safe. But they also watched the Kaizith Dominion grow stronger. They watched High Warlord Dexel conquer system after system. They saw how he looked at human colonies the way a predator looks at its unguarded prey, and they began to prepare Alina. Vasquez returned to her quarters and sat alone in the darkness for a long time. She was one of the few who knew the truth, one of the few who carried the burden of humanity's secret history. She thought about the millions of innocent people living on human colonies across the galaxy, farmers and teachers and children who had never known war, who believed the universe was a peaceful place where kind words could solve any problem. She hoped they were right, but deep in her heart, she feared they were wrong. And somewhere in the cold depths of space, High Warlord Dexel was making plans that would prove her fears justified. The storm was coming, and when it arrived, humanity would have to make a choice: keep wearing the mask, or finally show the galaxy what they truly were. Harvest. Colony was the most beautiful place humans had ever built among the stars. It was a moon that circled a gas giant in a system called New Eden, 300 light-years from Earth. When humans first arrived there 200 years ago, the moon was nothing but bare rock and thin air. They worked for generations to transform it into a paradise. Now golden wheat fields stretched to the horizon. Apple orchards covered the gentle hills. Rivers of clean water flowed through green valleys, where children played and families picnicked on warm afternoons. The sky was painted with the colors of the giant planet above, creating sunsets that artists traveled across the galaxy to paint. 2.3 million people called Harvest Colony home. They were farmers, teachers, doctors, and shopkeepers. They grew food that fed dozens of human worlds. Their children went to school and dreamed of futures among the stars. Their elderly sat on porches and watched the wheat sway in the breeze. There were no soldiers on Harvest Colony. There were no weapons beyond the tools farmers used to work their land. There was no need for such things. Humanity was at peace with the galaxy, and the galaxy loved humanity in return. Or so they believed. Maria Santos was 8 years old. She lived with her parents and younger brother on a small farm at the edge of the northern wheat fields. On the morning that would change everything, she woke early to help her father feed the chickens. The air was cool and sweet, and the first light of dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Papa," she said, scattering grain for the hungry birds, "can we go to the festival in town today?" Her father smiled down at her. He was a big man with gentle hands, born on this moon just like his father before him. "Of course, little one." After we finished the morning chores,
Maria never made it to the festival.
The first sign of trouble came at exactly 7:42 in the morning. Local time, the Planetary Defense Network, which was designed only to track asteroids and guide incoming trade ships, detected multiple objects entering the system at high speed. The operators assumed it was a merchant convoy arriving early. They were wrong. Hi, Warlord Dexal had planned this attack for months. He had chosen Harvest Colony specifically because it was defenseless. Because it was beloved. Because destroying it would send a message that the entire galaxy would understand. Humanity had cost him 3 star systems with their latest peace treaty. 3 systems that should have belonged to the Dominion. 3 systems that his warriors had fought and died for. And instead of letting the strong take what they deserved, the weak humans had convinced the Concord to give those systems to someone else. Dexal would not let this insult stand. The soft ones think they can interfere with the natural order, he had told his commanders. They think their words and treaties can stop the strong from taking what is theirs. Today we teach them the truth. Today we show the galaxy what happens when prey forgets its place. 50 Kaizeth warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above Harvest Colony. They did not send warnings. They did not make demands. They did not give the people below any chance to surrender or flee. They simply opened fire. The first plasma bombardment hit the capital city of New Providence. 20,000 people died in the first 3 seconds. The municipal building, the hospital, the schools full of children, all of it vanished in a ball of fire that could be seen from space. Maria Santos saw the flash of light on the horizon and heard her mother scream. Her father grabbed her and her brother and ran for the storm cellar beneath their farmhouse. Behind them, the sky was turning red, but there was no safety to be found. Not today. Kaizeth landing craft descended through the smoke and fire. Thousands of warriors in heavy armor spread across the colony like a plague. Their orders were clear. Kill everyone. Leave no survivors. Make humanity understand fear. The people of Harvest Colony had no way to fight back. They ran, they hid. They begged for mercy. None of it mattered. In the wheat fields north of what had been New Providence, Kaizeth soldiers hunted civilians like animals. They laughed as farmers tried to defend their families with pitchforks and shovels. They recorded everything on their helmet cameras and broadcast it live across the galaxy. "Look at them run," one soldier said as he chased a group of teenagers through the golden wheat. Prey should know better than to challenge predators. The massacre lasted 6 hours. When it finally ended, 2.3 million humans were dead. Every man, woman, and child on Harvest Colony had been killed. The beautiful moon that generations had worked to build was nothing but smoke and ashes and blood-soaked fields. Maria Santos died holding her little brothers, hand in the darkness of a storm cellar that could not protect them. She was 8 years old. She had wanted to go to the festival. The Kesith broadcast the footage everywhere. Every civilized world in the galaxy saw the images. Children being hunted through orchards, families cut down as they tried to flee, elderly people executed as they knelt and begged for their lives. High Warlord Vexel appeared on every screen, standing amid the ruins of New Providence with bodies visible behind him. Let this be a lesson, he declared. Humanity is weak. They have no place interfering in the affairs of true warriors. Any species that continues to support them will face the same fate. The Dominion fears nothing and no one. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. We have done the galaxy a favor today. We have reminded everyone of the natural order. The strong rule, the weak serve, and the foolish die. The galaxy watched in horror. Emergency sessions were called. Ambassadors made angry speeches. The Galactic Concord issued a formal condemnation and began discussing economic sanctions. But on Earth, something very different was happening. President Marcus Chen stood in the command center deep beneath the mountains of Switzerland. Around him were the Joint Chiefs of Staff, military commanders, and intelligence directors. Screens on every wall showed the footage from Harvest Colony, the death toll. The faces of the dead, no one spoke. The only sound was the quiet weeping of a young officer who had family on the colony. Chen watched the images for a long time. His face showed no emotion, but those who knew him could see the cold fire burning behind his eyes. He had been a diplomat once, just like Elena Vasquez. He had believed in peace. He had thought humanity's choice to bury its violent past was the right one. Now, 2.3 million of his people were dead. Children hunted through wheat fields. Families murdered in their homes. An entire world turned to ash because humanity had dared to broker a peace treaty. He thought about the promise humanity had made 3 centuries ago. Never again would they become the monsters they had once been. Never again would they unleash the terrible weapons they had built. They would be healers, peacemakers, friends to all. But they had also made another promise. A promise to protect their children, to keep their people safe, to never let innocents suffer when they had the power to prevent it. Those 2 promises had lived in harmony for 300 years. Today, they collided. Sir, General William Hayes said quietly, "What are your orders?" President Chen turned away from the screens. He looked at the men and women around him. Warriors who had trained their whole lives for a moment they hoped would never come. Keepers of secrets that the galaxy could not imagine. 300 years ago we made a choice, Chen said. His voice was steady, but it carried a weight that pressed down on everyone in the room. We chose to be sheep among wolves. We chose to hide what we were. We chose peace. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was harder than steel. They killed our children? They laughed while they did it. They think we are prey. He looked at General Hayes. It is time to show them how wrong they are. The general straightened. Sir, are you certain? Once we do this, there is no going back. The galaxy will never see us the same way again. Chen thought of Maria Santos, though he did not know her name. He thought of all the children who had died that morning, all the families torn apart, all the dreams that would never come true. Open the vaults, he said. And with those 3 words, everything changed. Deep beneath the frozen ground of Siberia, ancient doors began to move. In the hollow cores of asteroids scattered across human space, engines that had slept for centuries hummed to life. On hidden stations orbiting stars where no one would think to look, crews who had waited their entire lives for this moment finally received the order they had trained for. The mask was coming off, and the galaxy was about to meet the real humanity. The galaxy had many intelligence agencies. Every major species spent enormous resources trying to learn the secrets of other civilizations. They had spies on thousands of worlds. They had sensors watching every corner of known space. They had analysts who studied every ship movement, every communication, every tiny detail that might reveal hidden threats. None of them saw what was coming. The first reports arrived within hours of President Chen's order. A Valari trading ship passing through human space noticed something strange near a small moon in an empty system. The moon had been listed as uninhabited for 2 centuries. But now massive doors were opening in its surface, doors that were kilometers wide. And something was coming out. The Valari captain watched in disbelief. Ship after ship emerged from beneath the moon's surface. They were unlike anything in any database. They were enormous, bristling with weapons painted in dark colors that seemed to absorb light. There were dozens of them, then hundreds. The captain sent an emergency transmission to the Concorde before jumping too faster, then light speed and fleeing the system. Similar. Reports flooded in from across. Human space in the asteroid belt of a system called Forge. Rocks that had appeared solid on every scan began to split open. The asteroids were hollow, and they had been hollow for 300 years. Inside them were shipyards that had never stopped working, producing vessels in secret, while the galaxy thought humanity had no military. Near. A red dwarf star on the edge of human territory. A research station that supposedly studied solar radiation suddenly transformed. Its outer shell fell away to reveal a fortress packed with weapons, capable of destroying entire fleets, and in the frozen wastes of Siberia, on Earth itself. The ground cracked and shifted as doors that had not opened since before anyone alive was born finally moved. From beneath the permafrost rose the pride of humanity's hidden fleet, the Leviathan-class dreadnoughts. Each one was 12 kilometers long. They were covered in armor that could withstand direct hits from planetary defense cannons. They carried weapons that had been designed by the most brilliant and terrifying minds in human history. Weapons that had been improved and refined for 3 centuries, while the galaxy thought humans were harmless. There were 47 of them. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of the flagship, a dreadnought named Remembrance. She was 63 years old, her black hair streaked with gray, her eyes sharp and cold. Her family had served in humanity's secret fleet for 5 generations. Her grandmother had commanded ships. Her mother had designed weapons. Yuki herself had trained her entire life for a battle she had prayed would never come. Now it was here, and she was ready. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her first officer announced. "The first Retribution fleet is assembled and awaiting orders." Tanaka looked at the holographic display showing her fleet. 400 warships of various sizes centered around 15 Leviathan dreadnoughts. It was only a portion of humanity's true military strength. There were other fleets assembling at other hidden bases, but this force alone was enough to challenge any power in the galaxy. "Set course for Ironhold," she said. "Maximum speed." Ironhold was the greatest fortress the Kaizeth Dominion had ever built. It was constructed around a small moon near the border of their territory, a massive station bristling with weapons and shields. For 500 years it had guarded the approach to Kaizeth's space. 100 enemy fleets had tried to break through its defenses. All of them had failed. The Dominion considered it invincible. "Hi, Warlord Vexel," on his flagship when the first reports reached him. He was still celebrating the destruction of Harvest Colony, still laughing about how the weak humans had died begging for mercy. When his communications officer approached with a confused expression, Dexel barely paid attention. "What is it?" he growled. "My lord, we are receiving strange reports from our border stations. They claim to have detected a human fleet approaching Ironhold." Dexal laughed. "A human fleet. The humans have no fleet. A few patrol ships, perhaps. Send a squadron to destroy them." The officer hesitated. "My lord, the reports say the fleet is ... large. Very large. Our sensors are having difficulty counting all the ships." For the first time, something cold touched the edge of Vexel's confidence. "Show me." The main screen of his bridge flickered to life, displaying sensor data from the border stations. Vexel stared at the images for a long moment, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "This must be an error," he said slowly. "These readings suggest ships larger than anything in the Concorde registry. Ships that should not exist. The readings have been confirmed by multiple stations, my lord. The fleet is real. and it is heading directly for Ironhold. Dexel stood frozen. He had conquered 11 worlds. He had faced enemies that would make most species flee in terror, but he had never seen anything like what was on that screen. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "The humans have no military. Everyone knows this." But even as he spoke, a terrible understanding began to form in his mind. Everyone knew the humans had no military, because the humans wanted everyone to believe it. 300 years of peaceful behavior. 300 years of playing the role of harmless diplomats. 300 years of lies. "Contact Ironhold," he ordered, his voice harsh. "Tell them to prepare for battle. Every ship in the sector is to converge on that position. We will crush these humans and their hidden fleet, but deep in his gut, in a place he had never felt before." Dexal knew fear. Admiral Tanaka watched Ironhold grow larger on her screens. The fortress was impressive, she had to admit. Massive weapon platforms surrounded the central station. Shield generators created overlapping barriers of energy. Thousands of defensive fighters swarmed around it like insects protecting a hive. "The enemy is hailing us, Admiral," her communications officer reported. "They demand that we surrender immediately or be destroyed." Tanaka almost smiled. Almost. "No response," she said. "All ships begin attack pattern Omega-7. Primary targets are the shield generators. Secondary targets are the weapon platforms." The first Retribution fleet spread into an attack formation that no Kaizeth commander had ever seen. The Leviathan dreadnoughts moved to the center, their massive hulls absorbing fire that would have vaporized lesser ships. Around them, cruisers and destroyers wove patterns that seemed almost like a dance. Ironhold opened fire with everything it had: plasma cannons, missile batteries, energy beams that could slice through asteroids. The space around the human fleet filled with deadly light. The first Kaizeth officers began to smile. No fleet could survive such an assault. Then the humans fired back. The weapons that emerged from the Leviathan dreadnoughts had no official names. The scientists who designed them had simply called them problem solvers. They were the product of 3 centuries of research, built by a species that had once created weapons capable of destroying their entire homeworld, and had promised never to use such things again. Promises, it turned out, could be broken. The first shield generator exploded in a ball of fire visible from 3 systems away. Then the second. Then the third. In the space of 90 seconds, every shield protecting Ironhold had been destroyed. The Kaizeth defenders fought bravely. They launched every fighter, fired every weapon, threw everything they had at the human fleet. Some human ships were damaged. A few were destroyed. It did not matter. The battle lasted 9 minutes. When it ended, Ironhold was nothing but debris. The greatest fortress in Kaizeth's history, the symbol of Dominion power, the station that had stood for 5 centuries, was gone. Scattered across space in pieces too small to identify, Admiral Tanaka looked at the wreckage without expression. She thought of Harvest Colony. She thought of the children hunted through wheat fields. She thought of the laughter of Kaizeth's soldiers as they murdered innocent families. 9 minutes seemed too quick. "Send a message to High Warlord Dexel," she said. "Include an image of the Harvest Colony Memorial, and attach these coordinates." Her first officer looked at the coordinates and went pale. "Admiral, these are the coordinates of Kaizeth's Prime. Their homeworld, I know. You are telling them we are coming for their home." "Yes." Tanaka turned to face her crew. "They wanted to teach humanity a lesson about power, about strength, about what happens when prey challenges predators." Her eyes were as cold as the space between stars. Class is now in session. Across the galaxy, other human fleets were emerging from their hiding places. The Concord intelligence agencies scrambled to update their assessments. The numbers they were seeing were impossible. The humans had more warships than the next 3 species combined. They had weapons that made the most advanced Concord technology look like toys. For 300 years, humanity had pretended to be sheep. The wolves were finally awake, and they were very, very hungry, the Galactic Concord Assembly. had never seen anything like the chaos that erupted in the days following the destruction of Ironhold. Delegates shouted over each other. Emergency sessions ran through the night. Species that had been allies for millennia suddenly looked at each other with suspicion and fear, but mostly, they looked at the humans with new eyes. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked into the Great Hall, wearing something no human diplomat had worn in 3 centuries. Military dress. The dark uniform was simple, but unmistakable. Medals decorated her chest, medals from a service that officially did not exist. She moved with a confidence that seemed different from the gentle peacemaker the assembly had known for decades. The hall fell silent as she took the central platform. For 300 years, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the massive chamber, humanity chose to be sheep. We built schools instead of warships. We trained diplomats instead of soldiers. We buried our wolves so deep that we almost forgot they existed. She paused, looking around at the thousands of alien faces watching her. You mistook our mercy for weakness, our patience for cowardice, our restraint for inability. The Valari delegate rose from his seat. His scales had turned pale, a sign of deep distress. Ambassador Vasquez, the Concord demands an explanation. How is it possible that humanity possessed such military power without anyone knowing? This is a violation of Concord transparency agreements. Lena turned to face him. With respect, delegate. Those agreements require disclosure of active military forces. Our forces were not active. They were sleeping, waiting, hoping they would never be needed. But the weapons, another delegate called out. The technology your ships displayed at Ironhold. It is beyond anything in Concord records. How long have you been developing such things? 300 years, Elena answered simply. Since the day we joined the galactic community, we made a choice to present ourselves as peaceful. That choice was genuine. We truly wanted peace. But we also remembered our history. She touched a control on the podium, and holographic images appeared in the air above her. Images of Earth's past. Wars that had killed millions. Weapons that could destroy cities in a single flash. The terrible things humans had done to each other before they reached the stars. This is what we were, Elena said quietly. This is what we chose to stop being. We looked at our own history and felt shame. We saw the monsters we could become, and we swore we would never become them again. The images changed. Now, they showed Harvest Colony before the attack. Children playing in wheat fields. Families gathering for festivals. A peaceful world full of innocent people. But we also swore to protect our children. To keep our people safe. We believed we could do both. We believed that if we were kind enough, helpful enough, peaceful enough, the galaxy would leave us alone. The final image appeared. The ruins of Harvest Colony. The bodies in the fields. The face of a little girl named Maria Santos, taken from her school records. We were wrong. Lena let the silence stretch. When she spoke again, her voice was harder than steel. The Kissith murdered 2.3 million of our people. They hunted our children through fields and laughed while they did it. They broadcast the massacre to the entire galaxy as a warning. They called us prey. She looked directly at the section where the few remaining Kysith observers sat. They had been ordered to attend by their government, though they looked like they wished they were anywhere else. We are not prey. We never were. We simply chose not to hunt. She straightened her uniform. That choice has been revoked, across human space. The transformation continued. On the colony world of New Tokyo, a middle-aged woman named Keiko Yamamoto had run a flower shop for 20 years. Her neighbors knew her as a kind soul who gave free flowers to children and always had time for a friendly chat. They did not know that she had trained from childhood in combat techniques that predated space travel. They did not know that beneath her shop was a hidden armory. When the signal came, Keiko closed her shop, kissed her confused husband goodbye, reported to the local assembly point. She was not alone. Across the colony, thousands of seemingly ordinary citizens revealed themselves as members of humanities. Hidden reserve forces, the same scene repeated. On every human world, the friendly doctor who had delivered Babies for 30 years turned out to be a special forces medic with classified knowledge of alien biology. The quiet librarian who loved old books was actually an intelligence analyst who had been monitoring Kaiser's communications for decades. The cheerful bartender who knew everyone's name was a weapons specialist who could turn household items into instruments of destruction. For 3 centuries, these people had lived double lives. They had raised families, made friends, and contributed to their communities. They had prayed every day that their true skills would never be needed. Now they answered the call. Human trade ships that had traveled peacefully through the galaxy 4. Generations opened hidden panels to reveal weapons bays. Research stations transformed into military bases. The scattered population of 30 billion humans across 200 worlds suddenly moved with a coordination that should have been impossible. It was not impossible. It had been planned. Every detail, every contingency, every possible scenario had been considered and prepared for. Humanity had spent 300 years building a mask. They had spent just as long preparing for the day that mask might need to come off. The Keysith Dominion learned. It's the hard way. In the 3 weeks following the destruction of Ironhold, human forces struck 15 Keysith systems. They did not attack civilian populations. They did not massacre innocents. They were not Kays. Instead, they systematically destroyed every military target they could find: shipyards, weapons factories, fleet bases, defensive stations. Each attack was surgical and precise, designed to eliminate the Dominion's ability to wage war while leaving non-combatants unharmed. High Warlord Dexel watched his empire crumble and could not understand it. How are they doing this? He roared at his commanders. We have fought wars for 1,000 years. We have conquered 40 systems. How are these soft creatures defeating us? Commander Crixfell, who had once mocked humans alongside his master, now spoke with the voice of someone who had seen true horror. My lord, their tactics are unlike anything we have encountered. They do not fight the way we expected. They do not fight the way anyone fights. Explain. They attack from directions that should be impossible. They appear where our sensors say nothing exists. They seem to know our plans before we make them. And they're soldiers. Crixfell hesitated. My lord, I have seen recordings of ground combat. Human soldiers fought a Keysith warrior unit on Fortress 7, and the humans won, decisively. They moved faster than our eyes could track. They used weapons we have never seen. They showed no fear, no hesitation. Our warriors, who have never known defeat in personal combat, were destroyed in minutes. Exal sat in silence. His entire understanding of the universe was being torn apart. The weak humans, the soft prey animals who had no claws or fangs, they were annihilating his forces with almost casual efficiency. How? He whispered, how did we not see this? Crixfell had no answer. None of them did. The truth was simple but terrible. Humanity had come from a death world. Earth was a planet where everything tried to kill everything else. Humans had no natural weapons because they had evolved to use tools instead. They had no armor because they had learned to make armor. They had no fangs because they had invented swords and guns and bombs. And for 10,000 years before reaching the stars, humans had practiced the art of war against the most dangerous enemy they knew, each other, the Keysith. Were warriors who had conquered weaker species. Humanity was a species that had nearly destroyed itself in countless wars before learning to seek peace. The Dominion had trained for 1,000 years. Humanity had trained for 100 times that long. There was no comparison. Admiral Tanaka's fleet arrived at the edge of Keysith Prime's system exactly 3 weeks after the massacre of Harvest Colony. Behind her were 600 warships, including 23 Leviathan dreadnoughts. Ahead of her was the homeworld of the species that had murdered 2 million of her people. She opened a communication channel to the planet below. This is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the United Earth Navy. We offer terms of surrender, one time only. The terms were simple: complete and unconditional surrender, total disarmament of all Keysith military forces, delivery of every officer involved in the Harvest Colony massacre, to face trial for crimes against humanity. High Warlord. Dexal's response came within minutes. It was a video message showing a human prisoner, a messenger who had been sent ahead to deliver the terms. Dexal executed the messenger on camera. "This is my answer," the warlord snarled. "We will never surrender to prey. Come and take our world if you can. We will show you what real warriors are made of." On the bridge of the Remembrance, Admiral Tanaka watched the execution in silence. Her crew waited for her reaction. Some expected rage. Others expected grief. Instead, she simply nodded. "Very well," she said quietly. "All ships, prepare for final approach." We gave them a chance. She looked at the image of Kaizis Prime. A world of warriors who had never known true defeat. It will not get another. The Battle of Kaizith Prime would be remembered for 1,000 years. Military academies across the galaxy would study it. Historians would write countless books about it. Children would learn about it in schools. It was the day the universe learned what humanity truly was. High Warlord Dexal had gathered every ship the Dominion could spare. Over 3,000 warships formed a massive defensive sphere around their homeworld. It was the largest fleet the Kaizith had ever assembled. Warriors from 100 conquered worlds had been called back to defend the heart of the Empire. Every soldier who could hold a weapon stood ready to fight. Vexal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the destroyer of worlds, and looked at his forces with pride. This was the might of the Dominion. This was what 1,000 years of conquest had built. Let the humans come. Let them break themselves against this wall of fire and steel. "Today we show these prey animals the true meaning of war," he announced to his fleet. "Today we remind the galaxy why the Kaizith are feared. Today we wash away our recent defeats with human blood." His warriors roared their approval. Then the human fleet arrived. 600 warships dropped out of faster than light, to travel in perfect formation. At their center were the Leviathan dreadnoughts, their dark hulls seeming to drink in the light of distant stars. They moved with a grace that should have been impossible for vessels of their size. Admiral Tanaka studied the enemy formation from the bridge of the Remembrance. 3,000 ships against 600. On paper, the Kaizith had overwhelming numbers. But Tanaka had studied her enemy. She knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their psychology. More importantly, she knew what her own people were capable of. "All ships execute pattern storm," she ordered calmly. "Let's finish this." The battle began. Kaizith gunners had been told that the human ships were powerful but few. They expected to overwhelm the enemy through sheer numbers. They expected a long, grinding battle where their superior forces would slowly crush the invaders. They were wrong. The human fleet did not fight like any enemy the Kaizith had faced. They did not form battle lines. They did not exchange volleys of fire. Instead, they moved like water flowing through cracks in stone. Small groups of ships would appear where the Kaizith defenses were weakest, strike hard, and vanish before the enemy could respond. The Leviathan dreadnoughts served as anchors, their massive weapons tearing holes in the Kaizith formation. Whenever the Dominion ships concentrated their fire on one of these giants, smaller human vessels would sweep in from unexpected angles and devastate the attackers. It was not a battle. It was a lesson. 1 hour into the fight, the Kaizith had lost 800 ships. The humans had lost 40-3 to 2 hours, and numbers were 1,500 to 70-1. By the third hour, Kaiz's commanders were refusing orders to advance. Ships were breaking formation and trying to flee. The mighty Dominion fleet, the pride of a warrior empire, was falling apart. High Warlord Vexal watched his forces crumble and felt something he had never experienced in his long life of conquest. Despair. "Right. This is impossible," he growled. "We outnumber them 5-1. How are they doing this?" His tactical officer's voice was hollow. "My lord, their coordination is beyond anything in our experience. They seem to know where our ships will be before we move them. Their weapons are more powerful than our shields can handle. Their pilots are more skilled than any we have ever faced." "Then we will board them," Vexal declared. "Kaizith warriors have never been defeated in close combat. Send assault teams to their largest ships. The order went out. Dozens of boarding craft launched toward the Leviathan dreadnoughts, carrying the finest Kai'Zith warriors. These were soldiers who had conquered worlds through personal combat. Each one had killed dozens of enemies with their bare claws. None of them returned. The human marines who met them in the corridors of the dreadnoughts were not the soft creatures the Kai'Zith expected. They wore powered armor that made them faster and stronger than any unarmored warrior. They carried weapons designed specifically to fight species larger and more dangerous than themselves. And they had trained for generations in fighting techniques that humans had developed over 10,000 years of constant warfare. The boarding actions lasted minutes. The Kai'Zith warriors died in the darkness between the stars, far from home. Killed by the prey they had so badly underestimated, the battle ended in the 4th hour. When the weapons finally fell silent, over 2,000 Kai'Zith ships had been destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had lost 89 vessels. The defensive sphere around Kazath Prime was gone. Shattered into floating debris and drifting hulks, Admiral Tanaka looked at the planet below. Billions of Kai'Zith civilians lived there. Families, children, ordinary people who had nothing to do with the massacre of Harvest Colony. Admiral, her first officer, said quietly, "We have clear firing solutions on their major cities. One command and we could end the Kai'Zith as a species." Tanaka was silent for a long moment. She thought of Harvest Colony, the wheat fields soaked in blood, the children hunted for sport, the laughter of Kai'Zith soldiers as they murdered innocents. Part of her wanted to give that command. Part of her wanted to make the Kai'Zith feel what her people had felt. An eye for an eye. A massacre for a massacre. But that was not why humanity had fought this war. She said finally, "We are not them. Target military installations only. Shipyards, weapons factories, military bases. The civilians are not to be harmed." Over the next 6 hours, human forces systematically destroyed every military target on and around Kai'Zith Prime. When they finished, Dominion's ability to wage war was gone. Their fleet was destroyed. Their weapons were dust. Their warriors were dead or captured, but their children were alive. Their cities still stood. Their people would survive. High Warlord Dexal was captured trying to flee in a small shuttle. Human marines dragged him from the craft and brought him before Admiral Tanaka in restraints. The mighty warlord who had terrified the galaxy was now just a prisoner, his 4 eyes filled with hatred and fear. "Kill me," he snarled. "I will not beg for mercy from prey." Tanaka looked at him with an expression that was almost sad. "Death would be too easy, warlord. Too quick. You murdered 2 million of our people for the crime of wanting peace. You laughed while children died." She leaned closer. "You will live. You will be taken back to your world. And you will spend the rest of your life teaching Kai'Zith children about what happened at Harvest Colony. You will tell them about every person who died. You will explain why it was wrong. You will make sure your people never forget the price of what you did." Nex's face twisted in horror. For a Kai'Zith warrior, this was worse than death. To be forced to teach weakness, to spend his remaining years admitting his greatest victory, was actually his greatest shame. "You cannot do this," he whispered. "We can," Tanaka replied. "And we will. Take him away." 1 month later, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the Galactic Concord Assembly for the last time in her military uniform. The Great Hall was fuller than it had ever been. Every species wanted to hear what humanity would say now that the war was over. "The Kai'Zith Dominion has been defeated," Elena announced. "Their military is destroyed. Their leaders are facing justice. They will never threaten anyone again." She paused, looking around at the thousands of faces watching her. "Humanity will now return to being traders and diplomats. We will put away our warships. We will close the vaults. We will go back to building schools and hospitals and farms." She removed the medals from her chest, one by one, and set them on the podium. "We choose peace. Not because we cannot fight, but because we have seen too much war. Not because we are weak, but because we know the terrible cost of strength." Her voice softened, but it carried to every corner of the assembly. "But let me be clear about one thing. The wolves are not gone. They are simply sleeping again. If anyone threatens our people, if anyone harms our children, if anyone mistakes our kindness for weakness. Her eyes swept across the assembly, and for just a moment, every delegate saw something ancient and dangerous behind them. Oh, we will wake up. And next time, we might not choose to stop. She picked up her medals and walked out of the assembly hall. Behind her, thousands of delegates sat in absolute silence. The message was clear. The lesson was learned in the years that followed. Humanity returned to its peaceful ways. They brokered more treaties. They built more colonies. They made more friends across the stars. The gentle traders and beloved diplomats came back, smiling and kind and helpful to all. And everyone smiled back. Everyone was polite. Everyone treated humans with respect and care because everyone remembered. On Harvest Colony, now renamed Memorial, a new settlement grew among the restored wheat fields. Children played where other children had died. Families built homes where families had been murdered. Life returned to the beautiful moon that had seen so much death. At the center of the colony stood a monument. It listed every name of every person who had died in the massacre. 2.3 million names carved in black stone. At the base of the monument was a simple inscription. They pushed us too far. We dropped the mask. May we never need to do so again. And in the darkness between stars, in hidden places that officially did not exist, the wolves waited, just in case. They had returned to their sleep. These guardians who hoped they would never be needed. They maintained the old ships, updated the old weapons, trained the next generation in the old ways. They lived normal lives, raised families, and dreamed of peace. But they also watched. They listened. They remembered because humanity had learned something important in its long and bloody history. The best way to keep peace was to be ready for war. And humanity was very, very ready. The end.